Aloha and welcome back to the wildcard edition of the Ohana Packers edition opponent preview podcast. The podcast where two dudes from halfway across the world talk everything green and gold in advance of the team's game coming up that weekend. I'm Mike and that's Iowa Joe. Joe, like I said, it's wildcard weekend. The Packers are heading down to Jerry World to face the Cowboys. How are you doing?
It's house money right now. I've said it for the last few weeks. I don't really care. On one hand, yeah, you want the Packers to do well through the playoffs, but on the other hand, that inkling is still in the back of my head that any prolonged success the Packers have, the percentages of Joe Barry getting let go further into the tank. So, do I want to see him go all the way? As a fan, yes. But as a realist, no, because that could also mean that they've peaked at the wrong time. Let it slow build up. Let them get another year into the offense, a few extra pieces. We know what needs to be fixed. We know where we need to put, extra guys on the field. So, yeah, I mean, and let's face it, Dallas isn't a pushover right now. I know the big talk is, oh, well, if they don't win a playoff game, McCarthy's getting fired and so and this and that, but they're not a pushover. They've been strong all year. And yeah, the Packers are hot right now. Love is hot right now, but we also know how this defense can play. And it's not going to be a cakewalk. It's not going to be, oh, well, it's just the Cowboys type thing. It's going to be a slugfest.
Yeah, not the Packers are the wild card team. They're the underdog. Like you said, as hot as they might be playing, Dallas is still the better roster. And that's kind of where things stand. I agree with you. Anything they do is house money. Realistically, the only way this can go poorly is a catastrophic injury of some kind, and otherwise, it's just another opportunity to learn for Love. It's always good to have your first postseason opportunity. So I'm excited to see what he does with that. But same with you, not expecting much from the other side of the ball. But we'll roll into the Packers updates. Packers did practice on Wednesday, though they listed it on the injury report as a walkthrough as opposed to a full practice. But promising returns. I mean, it's a long injury report, but this late into the season, when is the Packers injury report not lengthy? So the only person who was listed as a DNP today would have been AJ Dillon. Otherwise, you had Jair, Romeo Dobbs. Good news, he would have been a limited participant. Elton Jenkins, Aaron Jones, Isaiah McDuffie would have returned from his concussion. Jonathan Owens, TJ Slayton, Preston Smith, and Christian Watson listed as limited participants. Devondre Campbell, Musgrave, Josh Myers, Jaden Reed, Sean Ryan, Savage, Zach Tom, Quay Walker, and Emmanuel Wilson all listed as would be quote unquote full participants. So, like I said, lengthy, but the good news is most of the guys would have participated, and wasn't necessarily like the quote unquote mental rep kind of day. It was a walkthrough with physical reps, even though they were at walkthrough speed, not even at a jog or anything. But good to see the guys get out on the practice field regardless.
Yeah, I know a lot of the beat writers were quote unquote excited because it seemed like all 53 players had helmets and were doing some kind of work today. So it's kind of surprising to see the DNP is AJ Dillon after reading those tweets about everybody having their helmets and doing like stretches and whatever else they were doing. But I'm kind of surprised at seeing Jonathan Owens and what was the other one? I know they have them listed as full participants, but Sean Ryan and Zach Tom, because I don't remember any of them really.
Zach, he hurt his finger on the first drive, yeah. So
okay.
I think because he did miss time, they're like obligated to list him. I forget what the there's certain rules within the NFL bylaws that dictate how bad or minor an injury needs to be, what the threshold is for you to have to list a player and stuff like that. So I think it's one of those super vague things, but it's like if there's the chance that the player could miss the game because of that injury, they need to be listed because that was always the like controversy with how the Patriots would like last minute list someone or stuff like that. So I don't really care, but it's for bettors and shit like that. So
Right,
I
and I forgot about that, but like I said, Sean Ryan, I don't remember anything really about him, and uh, Myers I knew, but like Jonathan Owens, I didn't know he was dealing with something, but the rest of them are all pretty much we knew they were dealing with some kind of issue.
yeah, like I said, it's the end of the season, and the main thing is like we said, grain of salt because it was a walkthrough, but it was good that like you mentioned, all the beat writers thought everyone participated. It looked like everyone at least did stretch, but Dylan was the only one who quote unquote didn't do anything today. So for reference, Ryan has an elbow, so that's probably why it's like it's probably just sleeved up kind of thing. Probably got banged in a pile, and then Owens has a knee, so that could be a minor boo boo bruise kind of thing, or it could be something worse. But it's always hard to tell at this point, especially when you couldn't really tell that he didn't get like walked off the field or anything like that. Super obvious during the game. So, but main thing is that it looks like Jordan Love should have his full complement of weapons going into Dallas. And that's big, especially with Love coming in hot. He's got his second consecutive NFC Player of the Week award. Ironically, only the second time a Packer has done that. I know that the Player of the Week awards aren't necessarily the oldest award or the most prestigious, but it is kind of interesting that the only other guy who's done it was Don Beebe back in 1996. I can't remember which week was which, but he got a special teams player and then an offensive player. The offensive player was for his big Monday night game against the 49ers in that season. And so just it's kind of a neat piece of Packers trivia that you can whip out of your back pocket because I know that most people are going to be like, well, duh, it's Aaron Rodgers or it's got to be Brett Favre or even like Sterling Sharp or something like that. But it's like, no, it's Don Beebe.
Yeah, I remember Don Beebe. He was I know I was kind of young when he was still playing, but I my memories of him were always that he'd go across the middle and get crunched. And it always seemed like he was getting walked off or carried off or whatever just because he'd cross the middle and get crunched. And
It was
but
a
I
different
also
era.
yeah, yeah, that's back when quarterbacks actually used the middle of the field. Uh but it just and I remember him being a smaller player,
Yeah.
but
I remember the clip of him before Super Bowl 31 because he was on all four of those Bills teams that lost the Super Bowls. And so there's that clip of him that will live into eternity where he goes, most people it's three times the charm but for Don Beebe it's five times the charm. So it's just
yeah.
good fun to see that clip of him. But
And then you've
great
got the
accomplishment.
infamous clip of him and Favre and was it Frankie Winters
Frankie, yeah, the
that
Halloween.
went to Holmgren's house, and Holmgren thought he was getting into a fight because the
Yeah,
one guy kept because BB he didn't know it was BB
yeah.
kept trying to get into his house.
Whose kids are these? Our kids. But back to the main point, great accomplishment for Love, and it represents how much his game has come along over the course of this season. Like we said, all leading into this regular season, throughout the season, the main thing is you wanted to see the arrow pointed up by the time the regular season had run its course. It is stuck in the upright position at the moment, and we'd love to see him keep it that way for as long as he possibly can. But that's what we've got for you heading into excuse me, into Thursday by the time you're listening to this. And the Packers are continuing their prep for Dallas.
Well, you
And
forgot
like
Mike,
Joseph,
and I even put it on the show notes that he won the Nickelodeon Valuable Player.
ah, missed that. That's cool. Like it's God, we're so old. Shows that he's one of the hip young players. He is with it.
Yeah, I mean, but really, I know people can point at the stretch of the season where they weren't playing well and all that stuff, but he was still the leader of the Packers and still put up numbers that are amongst the ones that are being talked about as MVP. Put him against Mahomes, put him against Hurts, put him against what's the other one that they're talking about right now? I saw somebody put him against CJ Stroud earlier.
Oh, Stafford.
Yeah,
Stafford's the
Stafford.
other one.
So these guys are being talked about MVP, but they put up similar numbers and in some cases had worse stretches than what Love did, but they're still being talked about as the actual MVP, not just the Nickelodeon valuable player. But it just shows how much he's grown. And I, like a lot of other people, have to eat. Well, I can't say eat a lot of crow because, yeah, I didn't like the pick and I wasn't a big fan of Jordan Love, but I wasn't like a lot of these other people where, oh, well, that was the worst mistake you ever made. And I just thought it was a little too soon to be taking a QB, but come to find out it wasn't too soon. It was just right at the right time.
Yep. You never know when you're going to need one, and usually it's a year after you should have done it. So it, hindsight is 2020, all that kind of stuff. But the Packers were proactive in they were properly proactive. That's how I'm going to put it. But yep, we're heading into Dallas this week for Wild Card Weekend. No shortage of headlines for any writers who are looking to pop out a story about this game. You have McCarthy versus the team he won a Super Bowl with. Dallas with one of those dubious undefeated at home for the season trends going into this playoff game. And then you're going to hear it all probably multiple times throughout the game, especially if Green Bay is keeping pace or happens to take a lead, like say they get up 2 scores on Dallas or whatever. You're going to hear are they too young or do they not know any better? We hear it so many times about young teams, but the Packers are officially the youngest team to ever make the playoffs based on average age of the roster. And
Is it ever, or is it just since 1970? Because I've
oh,
been
maybe
seeing that it's
yeah,
I've because you're not the only one that said that. I can't remember who else said it, but one of
yeah.
the shows I was
I guess
watching
I guess
earlier.
it can't be ever because someone had to make the playoffs when the NFL started. So yeah, and I don't know
Yeah.
how old everyone was when they started playing, but no, you're right. It is. I do believe you're right that it's 1970, and I can't remember if they counted or didn't count the strike year. So yeah,
Well,
so
and yeah, before that, there's got to be some teams that might have been average younger just because they were pulling guys straight from college. They weren't, it was like 18, 19-year olds off of, you know, college break that were
yeah,
playing
that was
games
when
or,
the NFL draft had weird rules. Like it was almost more like the NBA draft, and you could like pick future players and all this kind of junk. So yeah, the rule there was a little bit more of the Wild West in the NFL draft at the time, but
yeah, and just kind of sidetrack it. I actually met a guy that was drafted by Vince Lombardi and for the Packers. And he I think what he said was he went through camp, but then after camp he was cut, so he never really got to play for the Packers, but he had been drafted by the Packers. And I asked him, I go, well, how how it is now with the draft, and it's a big show. He said he was sitting like at home or he was at work or something, and he got a phone call saying, "Hey, Vince Lombardi just took you with whatever pick he was taken at." And he goes, "I didn't even know I was in the draft." So yeah, it's amazing how those things turn out.
yep. Just like how they always talk about it used to just be some little room with just a bunch of guys smoking cigarettes. There was no
Yeah,
interest and stuff. So how
but back
far
on
we've come.
topic. Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, since 1970, the youngest team, and it makes sense because the Packers in the heyday of Rodgers was always viewed as the youngest team. They weren't so much with the Favre years because Favre was the young guy and they were dipping a little bit more into the free agent pool than what Ted Thompson and them did from his start to now. But if you remember some of those top teams that the Rodgers era was, they were always viewed as the youngest team.
Yep. You had Driver and Woodson propping the age up on the Super Bowl roster and stuff. So, and Clifton
And
Tosher, yeah,
Pickett.
yeah. And even Pickett, I'd have to look,
He
but I
was
don't know if Pickett
mid to
was.
late 20s. I think he
Yeah,
was
he
like
wasn't. I don't think
28
he
or
was quite
something.
30. Yeah. So
But it still
different
skews
times.
everything when you've got a bunch of 21 and 22-year-olds out there.
Yeah. Your whole offense can barely drink, but
Yeah.
like you said, Dallas, they've had their moments where they've tail spun for a game or two, but you look at all the stats, they're the real deal across the board. DVOA has them the fourth overall team, ninth on offense, fifth on defense, 10th on special teams. Their offense, they've been, other than when they played like the Niners and some outlier games against like the Bills, they've scored on basically everyone, especially at home. They're a hair under 30 points per game, first in the league. The fifth most yards per game. Not They're not the slobber knocker rushing team anymore. They're doing it more in the pass game. They're right about average in rush yards, and they're third in pass yards. So a different unit than the last time these two teams met in the playoff. But really, on their offense, they've got a pretty clean bill of health. They've got guys listed, but most of them are, not injury related, vet rest kind of things. The only guy who's popped up as a limited participant of note is Tyler Smith with a foot, and I don't recall how he got that or whether that was from this most recent game or if it's something he's been dealing with. But um, you know, like Dak is one of those guys who's definitely been put into the MVP consideration. He's had a really good year this season. He's had a really good season this year. 36 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He still has moments where he kind of gets a little turnover wonky, or you'll kind of just be watching him and kind of shake your head at what he's doing time to time. But a lot of his success is throwing the ball down the field, and so there's that sort of dichotomy where is Barry's system the perfect thing to put a roof over this offense, or is Dallas just going to stretch them vertically and horizontally in ways that'll just rip apart Barry's umbrella coverage? Um, their run game isn't like I said, it's not the machine it was when we faced them the previous times in the playoffs, with DeMarco Murray leading the league in rushing or a rookie Zeke Elliott just taking the league by storm. But Tony Pollard is still a very good running back. He's broke 1,000 yards this season. Not the most efficient, but still cracked 4 yards per carry. And like I said, the O line isn't just totally whacking people and mashing them off the line of scrimmage like they used to, but it's still a talented and more veteran seasoned group now as Teron Smith and Zach Martin enter the twilight of their careers. But as Tyler Smith has settled in really well at left tackle, and Terrence Steele, their right tackle, has had some struggles this year, bouncing back from an ACL last year, but is a solid right tackle for that group.
Well, and
And
you were just talking about Dak being in the MVP consideration. Well, what I was doing was looking up to comp the two. And I mean, yeah, Dak is leading, but it's not by much. Completion percentage, Dak is at 69.5, and Jordan is at 64.2. Dak has 4,516 yards. Love's got 4,159. Passing yards attempted, or passing yards per attempt, 7.5 or 7.7 for Dak, 7.2 for Jordan. Yards per game, Dak is 265.6 and Jordan is 244.6. Passing TDs, Dak 36, Jordan 32. Interceptions, Dak 9, Jordan 11. Rating 105.9 for Dak, 96.1 for Jordan. And then even their rushing yards are Dak has 55 yards for 242. Jordan has 50 for 247. So,
Yep.
I mean, they're
So
not even that far apart on that. And, Dak is an MVP candidate.
it's one of the it's definitely buoyed by he's on the second seed in the NFL. It's a lot like Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy wouldn't be an MVP candidate if the 49ers weren't the one seed. Let's just be
Right.
totally honest. It's in the similar boat. But a lot of
Stupid
things for
Cyclones.
and I haven't even got into it. The Cowboys, they have a deep receiving room, but realistically, it's all centered around what CeeDee Lamb brings to the table. Think like those years where Jordy was wide receiver one.
I disagree with you a little bit on that because Dak has been relying on Brandon Cooks a lot lately on top of CD. So they've got a nice 1-2 punch there on top of their depth.
They do,
So
but purely when you look at the production, you total up his stats against the rest of the guys on the roster in terms of receptions and yards. He's basically equaled the second to fourth players on the team combined, and then receiving touchdowns and targets, he's pretty much equaling the next two guys on the roster. So, um, it, you're right. Cooks does provide a nice 1-2 punch with him. His speed and different route running style really plays well off of the attention and gravity that Lamb has on the field. But this is still a McCarthy offense. It does work because he's got three receivers. Tolbert is the third guy, and they do have Ferguson. Uh, ad nauseum, Wisconsin fans, Barry Alvarez's grandson. Can't tell you how many times I heard that on the Big Ten Network. But
yeah, no kidding, right?
and I bring this all up to say Lamb is the guy who you would think would have the target on his back, but I doubt that jaw gets locked on him. I get the feeling that Barry is going to want to play this one straight up, and we're going to live with the results. It's for Green Bay to have any shot. We'll get into it when we get to the defense, but I think Green Bay's got to score 30 to have a shot at pulling this one off, and it's just
I
how
said
many
it's going to
times.
be a slugfest.
Yeah,
It's going to go back and forth between the two teams, and it's going to be whoever's defense can make that last final stop.
yep,
And as much as you'd love to see something like that happen, just to say Jordan Love did it just as well as Aaron Rodgers, where it came down to a last second field goal. I That's not the way this team needs to do it. If this team is serious about having a playoff run, they need to settle in and they need to do what they did against like Detroit and Kansas City and games like that where they just went out and they struck. This is going to age me a little bit, but thanks to Cobra Kai, it kind of came back. Strike first, strike hard, no mercy. That's the kind of
that's
thing that they
endless.
need.
That's timeless. Don't apologize for that.
But yeah, but I remember before it was Cobra Kai thing, so that's what I mean. Wax on, wax off, Mr. Miyagi here. But they do. They need to strike hard first because I know the guys on Lombardi's bar were talking about it, and Dan and Todd agreed that they need to take a deep shot on the if they get the ball first, take a deep shot for just hope Christian's hamstring can last that one major play, or even Dan threw out the idea, and I kind of like it, but I kind of don't because it's already on film. But go back to the trick play that was kind of messed up, where we got the whole silly body Love thing from, where Wilson kind of screwed up the throw, and Love couldn't get his because that would have. We both said it at the time that had that if even if Love didn't mess up his footwork, that still was going for a touchdown because he had a guy wide open.
Yep.
And that's the type of thing that I think they're going to need to do in that opening drive if they get the ball first to set the tone.
Yeah.
Tell them, we're not afraid of you. We're going to run it down your throat.
Yep. So, like I said, we'll get to that when we talk about Dallas's defense.
Well, let's get to it. We're basically there anyway.
But yeah, more like I said, just to put a bow on it, they've got a lot of receiving options, so expect Barry to play his umbrella coverage, and we'll just see if it's going to come down to the usual: can someone make a Herculean effort, and will one of the pass rushers pop on tape and just win his individual matchups at will? But getting into the Dallas defense, this is a group with a lot of talent, a lot of star power, headlined by Micah Parsons. They're giving up 18 and a half points per game, which is fifth in the NFL, a hair under 300 yards per game, which would also be fifth. They are a little suspect against the run, and that's where they've kind of gotten chewed up in their losses. They're giving up league average in rush yards per game, in terms of 112 yards per game and 4.2 rush yards per carry. That's a typo. So both of those are about middle of the pack, and their pass defense is giving up 187 yards per game, which is fifth. So that's mainly off of the strength of their pass rush. Going in, they're a little banged up on defense. We saw Stephon Gilmore leave their game last week with a shoulder. He says he's fine. The way he came off, it looked like he dislocated it, and they're obviously going to play it close to the vest, but realistically, their quarterback room gets suspect really quick because Diggs is out. He's been out for, I think, since like week 2 or something like that, with a torn ACL that he suffered in practice. And Deron Bland gets all the glitz and glamour because of all the pick sixes he's got, but he's got him more on the strength of the pass rush, not because he's a great cover man on his own. Famous last words, but just telling you what pops up on film. And then the other key guys, Malik Hooker, the safety they brought in, who used to be with Indianapolis, he's got an ankle. And then 2 guys on the D-line, Dorrance Armstrong, who's their second lead in sack man. He was a full participant with an ankle. The big one to watch is Jonathan Hankins. He was limited with an ankle because when Dallas has gotten smoked in the run game, it's been in games where Hankins is limited or not played. And I think he missed the game against Buffalo when they got lost by like 20. I don't remember if he played the first Philly game when Philly really took it to Dallas early in that game. So, kind of like you said, Joe, Green Bay's got to be able to run the ball. And I think they should be able to, based on what we've seen from them the last few weeks. That O-line has really played well. They've gotten a good grip on the run game together, especially when you incorporate Sims and Kraft as blockers. And they should be able to get movement and create lanes for Aaron Jones, who I believe led the league over the last 3 weeks with his like 360 rush yards in the past 3 weeks. So that'll be huge because the better you can run the ball, the more you can go to play action, like you said, to take deep shots to stretch Dallas's defense deep. And the more you can run the ball.
2 things that you forgot to mention about the Packers offense is Aaron Jones playing in Dallas has been terrific. He's went over 110 yards in 3 games in Dallas,
Yeah, I
and
believe so.
he had his famous 4 touchdown game against Dallas and the 10K wave, as he likes to call it. So, if Hankins can't go and if Dallas is already suspect when it comes to the run game, I would even maybe call up Kenyon Drake and use a practice squad call up and just go with well, never mind because they got Patrick fucking Taylor on the team, but go like a 4-man, the 4-headed run monster on them. They tried to do this early on, but even if Dylan can't go, throw out Drake and Jones on this in the same. My words are
The pony
failing me.
package. The pony package.
Yeah, the pony package where they're in the same play. Then you don't know which running back you're using. You don't necessarily have to run out of it, but then Dallas is really screwed up, especially if they are suspect against the run.
And a lot of it is because Dan Quinn is running a kind of a similar minded system where he's trying to get a lot of athletes on the field to what Barry wants to do. His scheme is more aggressive, but he does have, his linebackers. Parsons is the biggest one, and he's got a lot of like hybrid safe. They were former college safety kind of players playing linebacker who, they hold their ground in the run game by being aggressive and sticking their nose into the box and stuff like that. But that's where you've got to be able to win with, especially when you're in your 12 personnel. With, like I said, with Kraft and Sims on the field, you got to be able to create movement, and that way, if you can create movement on them against with the run, you can crease them in the pass game, and then to put on top of that, the more you're able to run, the more you take the pass rush's legs away, because Micah Parsons is, as good as this Packers O-line is playing, Parsons is going to be someone that they have to account for on every snap, especially I'm sure that you've seen it on Twitter, ESPN, whatever football channel, where they highlight how he'll kind of start out in the B gap and then he jumps over into the A gap at the snap and just screws everything up off the snap of the ball. And so that, Myers and the two guards, they're going to have to be on top of their game, because you can't let him come right up the middle, rip roaring at Love, because that'll just ruin everybody's day at that point. So got to have a plan for Parsons. And that's why I think running at him is the plan. And you just got to create movement as much as you can. They still have a lot of good players on that front. DeMarcus Lawrence is still out there. He doesn't really have the stats he used to, but still a dangerous player. He still likes to knife his way into the backfield to create negative plays. Like I mentioned, Parsons, Armstrong, like I said, is their second, the guy with the second most sacks on the roster. Ironically, they only have one more sack than Green Bay does. And both teams, I think Dallas ended up like 13th and Green Bay, so that would make Green Bay like 15th or 16th in total sacks. But all you hear is Dallas pressuring opposing teams, and you do see it when you watch their game film. They can create a lot of havoc on opposing O-lines, but Green Bay is going to be one of the better, left tackle to right tackle 5-man O-lines that they're going to have faced, and they need to play like it. It's going to be a meat and potatoes game on offense for the Packers, and they're going to need the best game of the season from their O-line to have a chance at winning this game and, moving on to the divisional round. Like I mentioned, they're going in with Gilmore it's hurt in some way. They're saying that he's fine, but if he gets dinged up at all during this game, that really starts to put pressure on their secondary, because the rest of their options, like I said, Bland, he has the stats of a superstar, but when you watch him cover, it's a lot of, I have it in the notes, it's Clinton Dix style interceptions where it's because of an overthrow or a tip pass or the pressure in the quarterback just kind of throwing a duck up, and the receiver isn't expecting the ball, and Bland is just running under an arm punt for an easy run back. Because you watch like the Seattle game when Geno was on his game, they were cooking Deron Bland for most of that game. So Green Bay is going to have their chances, and the main thing is that Jordan's got to have time so that he can hit those throws, because when they have their opportunities, Green Bay's got to convert. They can't, you're in the playoffs. There aren't any bad teams. You can say that certain teams might be overrated and all that kind of stuff, but you're only playing good teams at this point, and how good you match up is how efficient and proficient you're going to be on whenever you have the ball. And Green Bay has to maximize their opportunities to have a chance to pull the upset on Sunday.
Yeah, I just I don't know. I said this at the beginning of the pod that right now it's just house money. I'd love to see the Packers do some. As a fan, I'd love to see Packers do something. But realistically, they are the underdog. There's no doubt about it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no, oh, well, it could go either way. No, they are the underdog. But they have the ability to punch up. They're right now, you're looking at the Rocky story. They're the guy here. I'm throwing out all kinds of antique
They're all
pop
good ones.
culture
They're all good ones.
pop culture references, but they basically are playing the Rocky right now. They're everybody's shitting on them. Oh, well, they just barely squeaked by, and they're not going to do anything against Dallas. And Dallas is being the creed of it all. And oh yeah, dancing around. And all it takes is just that one punch in the mouth. And all it takes is that punch to the gut, that, chop them down style. And it just, it could happen. But I just, I'm gonna let it happen. I'm not gonna sit here and talk. Oh yeah, we're going to the Super Bowl. This is 2010 all over again. You got to be realistic about this.
Yeah.
This is all miracle work right now. There's no
Smoke and
doubt about it.
mirrors. Yep.
So
Like you said, house money, smoke and mirrors, whatever cliche you want to put on it. But that would be my thing that I want to see. You know what? Like you said, what do we want to see coming out of this game? Want to see this offense start hot. And hey, if they throw their haymakers and they just run out of, they run out of punches, run out of bullets by the end of the game, that's fine. It's like you said, they're a year early at the very least. So just make sure you go down swinging. Don't go down sad trombone style. So that's all I really want to see out of this offense. Empty the playbook, um, leave it all on the field, and see what happens when the clock strikes zero on it. So the one thing that I forgot to mention about this defense is they can be pretty undisciplined. You see it in a lot of their primetime games where especially when they're trying to rush the passer, guys are jumping off sides, lining up off sides, things like that. So you can catch Dallas, especially. I don't know how well trained McCarthy will have them, but Love should definitely be able to pull his pre-snap calls and try to use his cadence to draw Dallas offside. Especially because as much as it's in the heart of Dallas and all that kind of stuff, Green Bay has always had good attendance at games in Dallas. So I do expect them to have some kind of presence, and hopefully they'll be able to throw Dallas off a little bit at different times of the game. But yeah,
well, and one thing you also forgot to mention is, if you honestly look at it, outside of a few different things, he's just been more successful at it. Dan Quinn and Joe Barry run the same friggin' defense. Because as some people know, but a lot of casuals don't know, Joe Barry is Dan Quinn's son-in-law. So
other way, I think Dan
no,
Quinn is Joe Barry's son-in-law, right?
no, Dan Quinn's the one that's older.
Really? Ah,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure of it. Let's look it up.
ah.
Dan Quinn, son-in-law. Well, it helps if you
They're
put
the
the right.
same age.
My phone's not working.
They're the same
Look it up.
age. What the hell? Hold on. Where is personal life? Come on, Wikipedia.
I swear somebody told me, or somebody was saying that it's Dan Quinn's. Maybe I heard wrong. I don't know. Joe Barry is somebody's son-in-law because they keep calling him the biggest Nepo baby.
No, Barry is
And I said, I know how
Marinelli's
that.
son-in-law.
Marinelli. Okay. That's what it is.
Digging ourselves out of the rabbit hole. But no,
That'll
like I
be
said,
cut out.
it is. They do have similar concepts. It's a lot about trying to limit the big play, but Quinn does have a little bit more aggression to his scheme than Barry obviously has brought to the table. But we'll see who wins. Like I said, it's going to come down to the line of scrimmage. Can Green Bay's front create pressure on Dak? And on the Packers offense, can their O-line create holes in the run game and protect Love when they do, drop back to pass? So we'll see. And don't have, like I said, it always comes down to meat and potatoes, but at the end of the day, this game is still won at the line of scrimmage. So Green Bay's O-line has come together at the right time of the year, so hopefully they can put forth their best performance. And you know, more like I said, and I agree with you that winning isn't necessarily the most important thing. It would be great, but more than anything, I just don't want to see Green Bay piss down their leg or just roll over and die
Yeah,
kind of
don't
thing.
let it
Yeah,
be the 49ers game while
yeah.
where
2019. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, where they just get
At
their
least
ass
fight
handed
back.
to them.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the biggest thing. And we'll just see where we stand when we come on here on Sunday. And hopefully we're in, at least if not happy, at least in a positive, we have a positive takeaway from this game. So we'll see where it all stands when we get on the air on Sunday. Joe, yes or no's for the week? What do you got?
I just threw one out there. Are they going to have their full complement of receivers for this game? I'm going to say
I
yes, but I said yes last week because I figured you'd throw everything out there, but for some reason Christian Watson was still uh not playing. But you got to think they've all got to be there this week just because it is, you're playing for your season life as so it's said.
Yeah, and I think for Watson, he's gonna want to be out there too because I know he contributed. He contributed to some big wins over the Lions and the Chiefs, but this is it. You don't want to miss the first playoff game that your team is in while you're on the team you're drafted to. So, and we'll never know, but who knows if the plan was for him to go last week, and once Jalen Johnson was ruled out, and they kind of trotted Christian out for pregame warmups, and they said, it's fine, but it's still tugging a little bit or something. They said, we should be okay. They don't have Johnson. Let's just shut it down for one more week, kind of thing. And I like Westendorf always says, if you're cleared to play, you play. You don't. The football gods don't take kindly to you trying to manipulate the game and stuff like that, but I do think that there was an element of trying to, expecting that they would beat the Bears and then trying to make sure Christian wasn't, spent in week 18 when they didn't necessarily need him, but you obviously need all hands on deck to beat a Dallas team. So I'm going to say yes too. Moving on from yes and no to over under, what have you got for us this week?
I went kind of conservative on a couple of these just because of how I think the Packers might attack things to start with. So my first one is 150 and a half yards passing yards for Jordan Love.
I think yes, even
Up
because at some
over
point,
under.
over. I say over because I'm hoping it'll be in the flow of the game, but even if they're getting waxed, Dallas is going to loosen up at some point. So I think he'll cross it regardless. But I think he's going to have 200 most within the flow of the game.
Like I said, I went really conservative with this one just because I'm hoping that they will try to rely on the run a little bit more. I'm still thinking the over on it, so maybe I went way too conservative on this. But then again, on the other hand, it's one like we talked about. This could get like the Niners game
If
where
if Green
it
Bay's O
gets
line gets outclassed, it could look like that Broncos game from 2015 where
yeah.
Rodgers couldn't do a damn thing. So yeah, no, totally understand where you're coming in. And like I said, I just think that because kind of like we were saying, how Quinn, there's elements of his defense that are like Barry's, where they're trying to have got multiple guys back deep to kind of dissuade the big play. There's going to be underneath stuff for Love to hit, and he does have the kind of receivers who can take advantage of that. Wicks, Reed, Melton, Kraft, Sims, even to a certain extent. So I do think he'll get there. It's just I don't know how many attempts it's going to take to get there, if that makes sense.
So the next one I got is 75 and a half yards rushing for Aaron Jones. Now I may have set this a little bit higher, but like I said, I really think that they're going to try relying on him. And we know Aaron Jones is a Dallas killer. And so I have hopes for it that they'll rely on him a little bit more.
Going for optimistic fandom, I'm going to say over because I think in order to have a chance to win this game, he's got to cross 100. So I'm going to say over.
That's how I'm feeling too. So I guess this isn't exciting because I'm taking the over on that one too. Maybe I should have. I was originally thinking setting it at 90.5 and that, but this one I also went a little bit conservative on. But after, and I know you can't base everything off the Chicago game, but 2.5 sacks for the Packers defense.
I'm gonna say under. They've I know Zadarius had a kind of big game against him when they played in 2019, but I feel like for the most part they've more frazzled Dak than they've really sacked him. And you've had multiple plays where he's kind of had guys hanging off of him as he's still throwing the ball. I think it was the 2016. It was either the 2016 playoff game or the 2017 regular season game where Nick Perry's like dragging him halfway to the ground and he still throws a ball like 40 yards down the field. So I get the feeling that they'll pressure him, but I don't. I think they'll sack him only once or twice.
I'm gonna go over, even if it's just barely. Maybe it's 3 sacks or something, but I think the pass rush has really started kicking up. And I think a lot of guys are starting to figure things out a little bit more, like Carl Brooks and, Lucas and guys like that. And I think they'll also maybe send Quay in a little bit more. So, or Quay will at least spy, since Dak can escape the pocket a little bit more. I know it's not like he used to, but he still can get out of the pocket. So I'm going to go over, even if it's just maybe 3 or 4 sacks. It's probably not going to be the 5 sack game or a 6 sack game or something like that, but it'll be like 3.5 or something.
Yeah, like we said, just in order for Barry's defense to win out this game, someone on that front is going to have just a stellar performance against what is still a good, tough Dallas O line. And Dak is still, like you said, he doesn't run as much as he did before that gruesome ankle injury he had, but he still is a mobile quarterback and a strong runner. So, but Green Bay does have a lot more athletes on the outside, and so hopefully they can create some pressure. Like I said, get him throwing on the move before he wants to, and maybe get some turnover worthy plays. But that's going to do it for our preview of this one. Like I said, we'll see you guys back when we record on Sunday after the game. New thing that we've got coming up. We are going to start doing some polls on Fridays, really for now, it's going to be on potential article topics, just because our podcasts are a little bit more streamlined right now due to Packers still playing games. But once the Packers season is over, we'll use the polls to have you guys pick things like what draft position you want us to release next for our profile podcasts for the upcoming draft class, off-season topics, new DC, what direction the Packers will go in the draft, the Bakhtiari
We'll
question,
we'll
Aaron Jones.
also be doing our quote unquote second annual Packer awards for the podcast at the end of the season. So maybe we'll even throw up some polls on that you guys can even vote for who you guys think should win those uh awards, and we'll come up with a list of them and stuff like that. So this is just a new thing that we're trying, just to get more listener involvement and get to know what you guys want to hear from us, so we're not always sounding like the same show over and over again. That we don't want to be the same as other shows. We would like to have our own thing but still be within the Packer world.
Yep. So that's the new thing that's coming out. Also, reminder: continue to follow the Twitter account for the podcast at Ohana_Packers in order to drive up our followers so that we can start to do our giveaways. At 230 followers, it will be the John Kuhn signed picture, and then at 523, it'll be the signed Jair photograph. Remember, you got to be following the podcast account, not our individual ones. So make sure that you're following there. But Joe, any last
And
thoughts?
also retweet and all that stuff so we can get more people out there.
Yeah.
Uh, that we want, like I said, we want to get more listener involvement and want to get this thing spread out. So, the quicker we get to it, the quicker we can do the drawing. And as for final thoughts, no, I really don't have anything other than, repeating what I said at the beginning. Just, this is just borrowed money. This is just house money right now. So don't get too upset if the Packers don't win, because we
Like you said,
know it's
the spread is 7.5 right now. Like, and Vegas, Vegas can be wrong, but they're usually pretty good at this kind of stuff. So, um, Green Bay is the underdog. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But that's gonna do it for us tonight. Please follow our Twitter accounts at Kawano Mike and at Iowa_Joe86. Like you said, to be eligible for our drawings, you got to be following the podcast account at Ohanda_Packers. When we do provide updates for the drawings, please make sure to retweet it so that we can make sure that we cross the thresholds we're looking for so that you guys have a chance at the drawing. Please check out the website, ohandapackers.org. We're going to start churning out more articles for you guys. Joey Van Zumeren just put out a piece on what making the postseason means for the 2023 Packers now and moving into the future. And we are going to have more correspondence and articles going up in the near future, especially as we head into draft season. Please follow the podcast on your favorite podcasting apps. Give us a like and a subscribe if you're enjoying what you're hearing. Any comments, positive, negative, please give those to us. We appreciate those, and we'll incorporate those into our upcoming episodes. Packers stamped their ticket to the postseason last week with a win over the Bears. They traveled to Dallas. Like we said, storylines galore heading into this one. But the main one, how are the Packers going to go in the postseason? Are they going to buck up and bow their back, or are the lights going to be too bright? We will find out on Sunday, and we will record our review of the game once the clock hits zero. But thank you, and go Pack go, and aloha.